Roto Force is an easy to pick up but hard to master, high energy, top-down bullet hell and twin stick shooter, with a little bit of a boss rush kind of vibe thrown in. And it's coming from a small indie team named Accidentally Awesome, working on their first commercial project. The game releases today on PC, Android, and iOS in just a few short hours from when I upload this, but is it worth your attention? Yes. The answer is yes. Let me explain. But first, while I received a copy of the game for free, it doesn't impact my review in any way. These are my own raw impressions after playing the Steam version of the game. Okay, let's get started. Roto Force may look like a fairly simple game at first, and well, it is, kind of, but with good reason. First crafted as an idea sparked during a Game Boy-themed game jam in 2016, the team has been working on fleshing it out ever since. And it really shows, as there's a lot of nuance and surprises in store for you that might not jump out right away, but it becomes more and more clear the further you get into it. We'll talk about what I mean by that in a little bit, but let's start with the basics. Roto Force takes you across 9 levels, each with their own color schemes, unique arena, and many waves of enemies, mini-bosses, and not so mini-bosses. You're mostly locked moving side to side, but can dash around to other sides of the arena to avoid enemy attacks. Holding dash gives you some more time to aim your direction, and eventually stops time completely. This presents a good risk-reward system, as in most cases you might not find enough time to be able to take advantage of this, but when timed right, it can really help you get out of a rough situation. Like any good bullet hell, the game presents a good challenge while still remaining fair throughout. Well, for the most part. Some of these bosses get pretty brutal. F this guy, and especially F this guy. But still, even these bosses eventually go down once I learned how to handle each attack and started to better recognize what was coming. And the game fully respects your time. Dying only resets you back to the start of your current wave or boss fight, and you can jump right back in almost immediately, giving you a chance to switch weapons too. Speaking of weapons, each level has these mini-bosses that reward you with a new weapon upon defeating them. These all have their own pros and cons, and while in most instances I found using their default rapid fire as my preferred choice, certain weapons did have great situational uses for some waves or bosses. At each checkpoint you're free to switch weapons before taking on the next wave, and that's pretty much the basic mechanics. But the key to what makes this game stand out and feel so good is that none of this is procedurally generated or randomized. Every wave, mini-boss, boss, and every other aspect of the game is handcrafted. This means the enemies will appear in the same type, order, and number for each specific wave. Enemy movements and attacks will of course still react to where you are and may have random attack patterns, so you still have to be ready to react, but otherwise everything was designed in a way to put you in these increasingly challenging but still very beatable situations. This not only makes it so you can learn from your mistakes if you need to retry, but it also makes it feel so much less likely to be screwed over by bad RNG. See this death right here? That wasn't due to RNG. It was the controller. This makes it feel like every aspect of the game is intentional. All the bosses are well designed and each felt like they had really clever and unexpected surprises to them, even breaking free from the layout of the arena at times. Besides that, the music is really solid, and it gets dialed up even more during boss fights. I especially love the dynamic changes in music in this level as you move in and out of the water. The art style is very distinct too, and a lot of this comes from the dev team retaining one key element, or rather limitation, presented by the game jam that inspired Roto Force. And that's the 4-color scheme palette. While I've seen other games take a similar approach to their color scheme to create a nostalgic feel, I can't say I've ever seen it done this well. The animations and use of the various color combinations offered are so crisp and clear, creating something that feels way more modern than you would expect based on the self-imposed limitations that are on display. The color palette even changes in certain situations like during boss encounters or when you get low on health. You don't even need to look at the health bar to know you're in great danger. And there is some degree of a story here, but it's very minimalistic. It adds some charm and quirkiness to the game, but it's all told in very brief text conversations to get you back into the action. Again, it doesn't waste your time here. As for post-game content, you unlock a harder difficulty after your first playthrough, which will likely more than double your playtime alone. And there's also these unlockable modifiers which add their own unique flavor to the game. These range from an option that randomizes your weapon every time you let go and repress the trigger, to being able to move only by dashing, or an insanely difficult one-hit KO modifier. These modifiers can be stacked too, so you can create your own unique, challenging playthroughs. What's cool about these is that each of them have their own sort of challenge that needs to be completed to unlock them, such as beating a level with only one weapon, beat a level without using the time freeze, or by beating level without getting hit, which, let's face it, I'll never unlock. And on the other hand, if you find the game too challenging, there's some nice accessibility options here to make it as easy as you need by increasing weapon damage, lowering game speed, or even making yourself invincible. All in all, I played Roto Force for about 9 hours before writing this review. This was enough time for me to play through the base game, unlock only a few of the modifiers, revisit one level with some of these modifiers, and try out a level on the harder difficulty. Your mileage may vary just going through the base game depending on your skill level and experience with these types of games. While this isn't an incredibly long game, there's still a lot of options here to lengthen your time with it. I can see myself easily doubling my time, and probably even more so if I ever find the courage to take on this harder difficulty. Plus, the dev told me there's some cool post-launch content already in the works. Most of all, there's just incredible value at its price point of $8 on Steam. Seriously, it's such a steal for a new game at full price that feels this well made. And it's even less if you consider the launch discount. And if I'm not mistaken, it's only $5 on mobile if you prefer. Either way, don't sleep on it. And that wraps up my review. I don't give number ratings here, just my raw impressions, but if it wasn't clear already, I really like this game and I think a lot of people would have a great time with it too. Every aspect of Roto Force is really well designed, I enjoyed every minute of it, well maybe not every minute, and I could easily see myself revisiting this in the future. So let me know in the comments what you thought of Roto Force, if I sold you on it, or if you're getting a second opinion, and if you enjoyed the video and want to stay up to date on the latest new indie games like this one, consider subscribing and checking out another video. I also give these in-depth previews for really exciting upcoming indie games, some of which you may not have heard of. But that's it for me. I'm Colonel Dupes, and I'll catch you in the next one.